Hello and welcome to the very first video log. So I thought I'd make things a little bit easier and just sort of start, posting the video on everything that's changed. So, in addition to, pasting all this stuff into the Discord channel as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So the very first change we're going to talk about is the new dungeon music list that's been added. So I've added multiple sort of battle style themed music's audio files to play, and I've thrown in some of the lab music as well, only because I'm like a big fan of it. I might eventually just add all of the music that's in the game into the possible lists, but it just wouldn't make sense to be in a dungeon and have town music playing, soft and lax and or goofy music sounding. I don't know. But, well, let's just take a look. So we got this first one that's playing. Now normally this wall would be fully closed. I only opened it up for testing reasons, so you can ignore that. And I might actually just upload a different video file with all the music that can play in here, just so you guys can listen to all the possible combinations. I think there's only like 7 or so for now. Eventually the list will climb. This one I really do like this one. It picks up here in a sec, but you'll just have to watch the other video and you'll be able to hear all the different ones. So let's do one more. So this one clearly sounds much more battle themed. I'll need to fix that. We'll try one more. And I'm gonna do one more, just because I really want to hear one of my favorite ones. There it is. So this is lab music. Lab 1 and Lab 2 have a sort of arcade type beat to it. And I've always been a huge fan of that type of music. So when you enter the Lab 1 and Lab 2, you'll hear, I think this is Lab 1 music. I'm not sure if you guys ever noticed, but if you don't have any speed buffs, your normal speed is 600 or so. If you start running, you eat up some of your stamina slowly, but you also, your sword will pop out like that. It'll use a separate animation. Let's see if I can't get that other one to play. That's the same one. Yeah, it's not gonna happen. That's okay. Let's move on. So, random music that'll play. So, nice little touch, what you'd expect from any game. Now, the next bullet here, we've got modified the master material for all floors by adding a new tick box to enable and disable using different scaling logic. This was due to texture scaling with the maze floors the larger they got and becoming blurry and ugly. So I wanted the same texture size no matter what, and the new tick box accomplishes this. So basically, the floor is, the bigger the maze gets, the larger it stretches. And even though these are each individual little pieces, they're welded together at the end of the logic, and it becomes one full piece, right? So then that material is added to this one full piece, and it scales accordingly. So the bigger it gets, the more it stretches. You can see that stretch going on with the dungeon walls here. So if you look at here, you see it's been scaled to fit this specific size, and then again it's been scaled to fit this specific size. Whereas you could take a look at these corner pieces. Actually, I think I'm using different corner pieces for those than I am for these, because it looks like a different size texture. No, it's about the same size. So you can see, even though this has scaled quite largely, it's still the same size diamonds, right? It didn't scale. That's the new logic I've added in, a simple tick box that lets me choose whether I want it to scale to the size of the mesh or just keep it the same size no matter what, and just, add more to the texture, add more to the scale. Like example, 3 diamonds there, a lot more than 3 here. This works good for, things that I need to scale versus things I don't want to scale. So it's really nice figuring that out, because it was, you could see here, that doesn't look so great. So that's still a work in progress. I'm going to change, basically I'm going to duplicate the materials and then enable the logic so that it doesn't scale for the dungeon walls, but it will scale for these ones. Since these ones are so much taller, it looks not so great. But who knows? You guys tell me how it looks. Obviously not so great, but that's just my opinion. So I'll tweak those little things like that over time. So next bullet, we fixed the dungeon master not highlighting. So that was just older logic I had. For whatever reason, the highlighting stopped working, so I got a new system that I purchased from the marketplace that makes it a little bit easier and is more versatile. And now this guy, he wasn't highlighting, now he does. That's all that is. Alright, so we'll move on. Let's see. Modified the dungeon walls to scale higher for each dungeon type. Small, medium, large, and extra large. So currently those are the 4 maps that we have. This is a small. So the outer dungeon walls will always be the same size. I had to, essentially, that's one of the other bullets that I'll talk about. I had to separate the logic for the outer walls because it used to just be spawned with the inner walls too. But clearly if these are all the same size and you turn on like a no walls mod, all of a sudden now the outer walls are gone too. So I had to separate the logic so that the outer walls always stay no matter what and they don't get tweaked. So it's referring to these walls, right? So these walls are, we'll call it size 4, right? Even though that's not the size. These are size 4. In a medium dungeon, they're size 5. In a large, they're size 6, so they're a little bit taller. And extra large, their size, they just climbs higher and higher. That way, if you're using modifier items to lower the walls, it's not going to be just you use a level 4. If they were all level 4 in all size maps, you're not going to be able to just use that level 4 modifier and just get rid of the walls every single time. That would be too easy. The deeper you go, essentially the different map, the larger the walls get, the better modifier items you're going to need to lower the walls. So it's, and you get better ones in the deeper dungeons as well. So it's not like, you do level easy maps, you're going to get the easy lower level modifiers. You do deep maps, you're going to get the better modifiers. So we'll just go and we will change to let's look at the extra large as an example, then you can really see the wall difference. There you go. So now you can see they're higher. We'll look at another perspective. We'll see what it actually looks like in the game. So there you go. Pretty tall. You can also see that in an easy map, you're going to be able to see over the walls fairly easy. in a larger, deeper map, you're gonna, it's gonna get a little bit more difficult, only because the size of the maze is increased, but so has the height of the wall. So, I mean, if you want to do a raw dungeon like this without any modifiers, you can, but it's highly recommended to collect some modifiers. That's where the easy maps come in, You can collect some low-level modifiers, or even like a medium map, level 2 modifiers, so that you can use them in like these maps. So farming lower level dungeons will be more of a thing, only to collect heart gems and to collect modifiers. Right now, the modifiers can all be obtained from the Sentinel. Kill the Sentinel, you always get a modifier of some sort, a random one. And I will be changing that in the future to where there'll be a new skill level for Earth Key modifier crafting. I don't know what I'll call it yet, but you'll be able to just craft them using plain heart gems or, marbled heart gems for level 2s, so on and so forth, and whatever other combination of items I can come up with at that time. So that way players will have more control. It introduces a new skill. It'll be really interesting, rather than it just being random what you get from the Sentinel. I might keep it to where you can still have a chance to get them from Sentinels, like a lower chance, because if you could just craft them using heart gems, it's going to give much more value to heart gems aside from just making deep geos. So that'll be a nice little increase value to heart gems, as well as a new skill introduced, so on and so forth. So let's move on. So now we have fixed a bug. AI would still sometimes move when frozen in place, using the freeze debuff. This was due to past tweaks to AI movement and behavior tree. The above bullet logic helped to fix this. I'm assuming I had another bullet that I deleted. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that part out. And so I've added new checks to the behavior tree to see if it's bound before moving. So basically I just had to add in a little bit more logic. So let's take a look at that. That's just your den freezing staff, I don't have any low-level dungeons, I don't think. So let's just make a quick one. I forgot I was on the large map. That's not going to make this easy. I should have changed to maps. That was my bad. I do need to fix them so that they spawn a lot. Shouldn't be going that way, but you can see now, lower walls, easy level dungeon without any modifiers. You can see over everything. So even though it's also more cramped, less rooms, but I mean, it's a small map. It's not going to be hard to figure out where to go when you can see everything. So now that they're frozen, they used to just, if I ran away, ran back within range, and then ran away again, they would start running all of a sudden like that, but that's only because the buff ended. So you can see I froze them for 12 seconds, for 18 seconds. The better staff you use, the higher the timer. You can also... no, never mind. I was going to say you could also use dust. No, you can't. Freezing with dust isn't the thing. So now they're not going to budge. I could do that and run away, and now all of a sudden they'd chase after me. That guy apparently isn't frozen. No, he's not. Okay, so moving on. Alright, modified a good number of the dungeon floor, wall, and corner materials, scale size, and enabled the material bowl previously added to force them to stay the correct size no matter what scale the object is. So we already talked about that, just enable and disable. I basically went through all the different materials and fine-tune them, to change their, if if it looked horrible and ugly with like the larger dungeon walls, then I would duplicate the material, tweak the new size, enable it so that it's tiled rather than stretches, and then just make the tiling a good size. And so there was a lot of materials to go through, so that one did take a good bit, but it looks much better than how it did before. Some of them still a little questionable, but I'll let you guys decide if something looks like it needs to be tweaked. So then created a new system for world buff icons. These are essentially server-specific buffs like those granted from dungeon modifier items or special events. So that's just like when you activate a modifier, it creates a world buff up in the top right. So we'll take a look at that right now. We created the logic for the first stage buff, or that should be world buff. World buff, extra loot. While modifier items don't yet exist, I mean they do now, the code is now ready to go for extra loot. Okay, so let's take a look at extra loot. Now again, even though I said that's just an older log entry, it's been a while since I've done any log updates. So let's take a look. Just I'll make a little bit higher level. Why not? I've got 10 million health. I think I can handle it. So we want extra loot. So here are extra loot mods, right? You got 5% extra gold. Basically, you'd get these in a low-level map. So like this map here. Small map, medium map, large map, extra large, right? So 5, 10, 15, and 20. The 20, or I'm sorry, there is a 25 one. I'm not sure where I just don't have that one on me. 25 you can get from an extra large map at a lower chance, since we don't have like a colossal size map yet. So I've added it in there as like if it randomly selects it, it rolls for a 50% chance. If the roll succeeds, you get it. If it fails, you don't get it, and it re-rolls again for a different item, or it randomly selects a new different item, and so on and so forth. So the extra gold 50% and extra gold 100% are going to be the really rare items. You're not going to generally get these very often. These might be special events. They might be cash shop incentives, high-end quest reward incentives. I don't know yet, but obviously I don't want to just hand these out too much, because using 3 100%, you're now getting, because you have 3 slots, right? Using 300% plus your default 100%, that's 400% or 4 times more gold that you'd be getting from kills. So let's just see this in action. Let's do a 50%. And we'll also throw in like a 15 and a 5. So that's what, 50, 65, that's 70% extra gold, right? They currently do not add any work value required. That will be changed in the future. Possibly? I'm not sure yet. You guys let me know what you think regarding that. So now we look at the item. You can see it's got the modifiers extra gold 50, 15, and 5. Throw it in here, and again it tells you actually, does it show the mob count on there? Yeah, enemy. So the enemy amount 31 that you see on the tooltip was recently added, and then of course it's always shown it here. And then you'll see your modifiers. Let's activate it, and you can see in the top right, sure enough, there's our extra gold drop, world buff. All loot drop value is multiplied by 75%. So now, did I already? Oh yeah, I'm tripping. So let's go over here. Now I don't have the log print to screen activated right now, so it would tell me what the original value was versus what it now is. I'm gonna do my Den Fireball staff and take these guys out quicker. Okay, so yeah, it used to show me original value was, new value is, just so I can make sure it was working, and it does. So now all these guys normally would drop, 75% less gold value, and it's within a range, so it's gonna vary a bit. There'll be some variation. Let's take that vagabond out. Oh, there's 2 that spawned here. That's a bug I'm currently trying to work with. The auto-targeting after it killed one targeted myself rather than the next guy. That just started happening last night when I realized, so I'll be looking into that soon. Let's take these guys out. I'm just curious what they drop. A couple dust. Got a red there. We got a green there. Yeah, that needs to be fixed. So you can see world buffs will now show up in the top right. Now these world buffs will work everywhere. So any map you play on, it'll exist. If like special event, that's a bad example. So let's say there's a special event and I enable the extra gold drop 100%, right? So now it's going to exist on every server or every map because each map is a server. So the main world will have it. All the dungeons you create will have it. Basically, it's just like special events that I can activate and just have it on all the time. And these do stack. So if we have a world event that's happening for all maps where it's 100%, and you go and you make a geo with an extra 50%, you're going to have 150% total. It's going to stack with what's on there for the map, you know. So, of course, when you go back or exit the map, you're back to 100% because that's what the default is. But just a nice little extra thing. They do stack with modifier items. So let's move on. Now we gave the mazes the skin metal gold, super reflective gold. Anytime the corners, walls, or floors have a randomly picked this skin, an extra gold stage buff will be activated to give extra gold, 5% for walls, 5% for corners, and 10% for floors. Stacks, so if you get all 3 skins, you get 20% extra gold. In the super rare event, you actually get all 3 gold skins for your dungeon, which highly unlikely, but possible. An additional modifier of 5%, I might change that to 10% because it's so rare, is added, so you get 25% total of extra gold. And again, that's going to stack. So if there's a special event for extra gold going on, and it's already at 100%, you add a modifiers for an extra 50%, you get all the golden walls for an additional 25%. Like that's, you know, it all adds up, which is nice. So let's see if it happens to, you know, let's just do this. Let's just tweak it so that it will give me the gold walls. So we're gonna just force it to give me the golden floors, right? So again, wall would be up, you wouldn't see anything. Let's go ahead and, oh, that's the wrong meat. We'll also add why not? Let's go crazy, right? 300% extra gold. Oh yeah, now we're talking. So it should be plus the 10% floors. Golden floors give 10%. 310%, there it is. Plus it tells you, golden floors modifier plus 10% loot. To everybody on the map with you that, hey, you just rolled the golden floors. Now it does get rather difficult when you have golden floors and golden walls. Like it's a little rough. Everything's reflecting. It looks crazy. But if you have just like one, it doesn't look so bad. I think this is actually, yeah, this is the other lab music. This is the same one that played earlier. I think this is the second one. Got that sort of retro music to it, which I'm a huge fan of. Okay. So now let's go ahead and take a look at if you had all 3. And again, you can see already that that's rough. See all that reflection going on? So if you get all 3, again, highly unlikely to ever happen. I really don't see it ever happening. You know what? That's fine. Let's just... No, let's not do that. I was going to use one of the bigger keys, because admin writes, I can overwrite it. But it gets way too many spawn in a small map together, and it gets super laggy, so let's not do that. Just make one real quick. Alright, so you can see it's... I mean, it's still manageable, obviously, but, I mean, look at all that reflection going on. You can see how difficult that could be. First person view. So again, if that happens, a little difficult to see, highly unlikely to happen. If it does, you should get a picture, because that's worth bragging about. I think I'm going to add it like a really big bonus to this, actually. If you get all three, maybe I'll up it by 50% gold value, maybe even 100%. Why not just go the full, you know, even it out to a full 100%? Such a rare chance of it happening, getting all three. So let's turn the randomization back on. And let's move on. Okay, let's see. Where was I? New system for world buffs. Logic for the first world buff. Gave mazes the skin gold. Alright. So bug fix. Maze material was being randomly selected for each individual player. The server would get its own random skins, then the users would get their own random skins as well. So now it'd be completely different. So if I ran, you know, if I ran two players, oh, not three. There we go. If I ran two instances of the client, you know, this client would see, you know, green walls, and this one would be blue. You know, it wasn't matching up accordingly. So even if somebody rolled golden floors, and everyone got the message, this guy's got green floors and this guy's got yellow floors, you know, it wasn't adding up. So moving on, so I fixed that. Server now selects its random skins and sets them, then the players run some new simple logic to set the materials to those set skins rather than draw from the random pool again. So just some logic fixing going on there. Then, moving on, we got created the modifier items for extra loot, 5, 10, yeah, we already saw all those. Created more logic for world buffs, hooked it all into the existing extra loot code, and it's fully working as intended. That's just more gold stuff. Behind the scenes, created the world buff extra mobs, and its logic, which will add more enemies to spawn inside your dungeon. Also created the world buff extra life and its logic, which will respawn anybody that dies that is inside the dungeon. Then I rewrote the way world buff logic works, made it more versatile when it comes to the amount of a buff to add, so that there no longer requires extra tags for the same type of buff. So before I had it like the tag extra gold dot 5%, extra gold dot 10%, a lot of extra tags that wasn't really needed. So I've shortened it down to where it's just extra gold, added a new variable that can be tweaked that has the amount. So it's, if the variable's 10, it knows it's 10%. If the variable's 500, it knows it's 500%. As long as the extra gold tag is present, then the logic knows how to fire off according to the extra variable that now exists. So it shortens up the logic a good bit, plus allows for future possibilities, such as a range of modifiers that can be randomly generated and dropped. Yeah, so essentially what I mean there is if in the future I want to make it so that when you're crafting an extra loot modifier item and it's a level 1, you can get, normally it's 5%, right? Maybe I want to make it a variable so that you randomly, based on your work value, can get between 4% and 6%, so that you have, different ones. So if you get a really good roll, you got the 6%, or, things such as that. So let's move on to showing the extra mobs and extra life that we just talked about. Oops, let's change that back to 1. So we have the extra life, right? This is just going to respawn you here at the spawn point if you die in the dungeon. So rather than being kicked out and sent back to the main world and losing your dungeon, you have a chance. Maybe you got an extra level 1 modifier, or level 2, or a level 3 modifier. So maybe I want to give myself a level life +1 and a life +2, so I get extra 3 lives. And the other one was what? Extra mob spawning? That would be these guys here. So we got extra enemies 5% more, 10, 15, or 20% more. So you'd find these on the extra large maps from Sentinels, medium or large maps, medium maps, and small maps. We're gonna add a 20% just to see. So normally there would be 40 mobs. Well, you're gonna add an extra 20%, so you're gonna get 48 instead. So let's go ahead and craft that. What am I missing? The meat. Sure enough, modifiers, 3 respawns total and 20% extra enemies. And there we go. Now we have 20% extra enemies, and again, world buff. So if I want to make a special event where it's just all worlds have an extra, 100% spawn amount, you go and do a dungeon, you've got twice as many enemies in it. So obviously I'm gonna have to be careful with these because they can get pretty crazy, lag players out depending on their PCs. So that's why I've only done it up to a 20% so far. And I don't know if I'll go any higher than that, because you could use 3 of them and have 60% mobs, because of your 3 modifier spots. 60% is already a pretty good chunk. As for the extra life, there currently exists only 3, right? Small maps, medium maps, large maps. Extra large maps, you'll still just get roll for the +3, but the extra large maps can also now drop the botched Fountain of Youth item, which will modify your dungeon to immediately resurrect you on the spot. Anybody that dies. Again, this works for anybody that dies in your dungeon. Your friends, your guild members, they die, it's going to take that pool from 3 to 2. They die again, it's going to take it from 2 to 1. And then once it's out, buff gets removed from the world. So obviously using extra life for like a world event buff isn't going to help a whole lot, because people are going to be dying left and right anyways, so it's going to go down. But if I set it to something like 1,000, special event for the weekend, 1,000 lives, you go into your dungeon and you have 1,000 lives every time you do a dungeon. Essentially, you're never going to lose your dungeon. I mean, unless you're doing a super deep looter and you're just dying lots, but even then, you're just going to keep respawning. So it's interesting the way it works. I think you guys will enjoy that. So I have too much health. I just now realized that you guys aren't going to see me die. So I'm going to tweak that real quick. We're just going to change my health to 100. And then let's see this in action. I'm just going to add a life 3. We're also going to throw in a botched fountain. Now, modifies your dungeon to immediately resurrect on the spot anybody that dies. A botched fountain of youth. Its creator remains unknown. It's been solidified and modified to be used in the creation of dungeons. While nowhere near the real deal, it's rumored to instantly bring you back to full health a random number of times. Caution is recommended, as nobody knows when their final death is upon them. So you may notice, you get +3 here, right? Well, botched Fountain of Youth gives you a range randomly when used. What that range is, nobody knows. I mean, I do, but it's nothing crazy. It's essentially a +4 to a +9 randomly. It'll choose one, so it's more rare, but it, not only does it give you a range of lives, but it immediately resurrects you back to full health upon death. So let's go ahead and see this in action. So again, a normal extra life will resurrect you at the spawn point. The Fountain of Youth will resurrect you immediately on the spot. So you can see how that could be quite useful. Is that? Yeah, that's it. Now you may be wondering what happens if you have both. It'll always use the Fountain of Youth over the extra life every time. So I rolled pretty high there. I got a 7. Minimum you could have gotten was a 4. Max was a 9. Ooh. It may be a little laggy, only because, playing an editor, you're going to get a lot more lag than playing a standalone build game. Let's go ahead and take off my healing. Let's take off my toughness. Okay, so I died. Got immediate full health. Died again. Timer, or it's down to 5. Now 4. So you see, there's nothing happens. Like, I can still move. I can still fight. Down to 2. Down to 1. And you'll see I'll stop moving. Okay, so that's it. Now if I die, it's going to do my normal death, and this is going to go from a 3 to a 2. Now I'm locked, can't move. I died. I'm going to respawn back at the spawn point. So you can see the clear differences of the winner there. Now, if you have 3 of those extra life +3s, and you use all 3 in your dungeon, say you're making a skiller, you want to make sure you don't die, and you got 9 lives, else one Fountain of Youth can be pretty damn useful. No interruptions, like having to run back to where you died and such. If you're in a fight with your guild members or something, you don't want them to have to run all the way back. You just lost manpower, you need somebody there immediately. So it's got some very good uses. So let's move on from that. Let me go and change my health back up so I don't get murdered in the next one. Let's just do 10k. Alright, so buffs, extra loot, extra mobs, extra life, rewrote. Okay, so now we got a bug fix. I fixed geomods 2 and 3 not showing their modifier when in the activation window. Self-explanatory. Bug fix. Fix the existing key modifiers for being copied to the next key in line when saving inventory. So I noticed sometimes if I had a blank key or any key next to the first key that it generated upon login, it would make the next key have the identical modifiers. So it was just copying the keys essentially. The stats for the keys remained the same, but the modifiers were copying over. So I saw my issue there and fixed it. Then I duplicated the extra life logic, modified, created the new buff Fountain of Youth. You guys just saw that, bringing players back to life on the very spot with full health. The amount of times is random generated. We got setup tooltip information logic for Fountain of Youth buff. That's just, when you hover over the top right of the screen where the buffs are, it tells you what it does. Added use information to the tooltip widget for all the other types of items, such as geo loot cache, recipe, etc. So it used to only show like food items and such, the use, what it does. Now I've added it so that loot cache will tell you on use, gives you random items from the loot cache. Recipe on use learns the new recipe. Geo on use summons a teleporter to a dungeon. Just a little extra information of what it does on use if it has a right click activation of some sort. We added geo enemy amounts to the earth key tooltip. I showed you that earlier. That way you know before you even activate a dungeon or the teleporter for the key how many mobs are in it. Modified maze logic to create the corner pieces for the outer walls separately from the inner maze corner pieces. Again, that's just the outer stuff here. That way it's separate from the inner stuff so that modifiers don't tweak it. Modified maze logic for scaling of the outer walls. Again, same thing. Created 5 new geomod items. Larger rooms 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. When used in a geomod slot, Geo will generate larger rooms at the cost of 5% less frequent rooms multiplied by the modifier amount. So if you have a lower or larger rooms 1, minus 5%. If you're using a total of 2 larger rooms, 10%. 5 is 25%. So this caps out at 30%. So you cannot go you can't have any less frequent rooms than 30%. So if you use a 10, 30% less frequent rooms. You use 100, 30% less frequent rooms. Just put that in perspective, right? And I just went over the example of that. So again, you'll see the basic maze is very much maze-like, right? There's not very big rooms. Like this is almost a room here. This would have been a room if that's well, it's essentially a room. You can ignore the centerpiece. It took out a wall there. There probably would have been a wall here or a wall here, but it fired off as a room. This is a room here. So the larger the dungeon, the larger the rooms, and the more frequent the rooms. So for a small dungeon, again, you're not going to see a whole lot unless you use modifiers. Let's look at the large map. So you can see now the rooms are much bigger, and much more frequent. So you're getting a lot more. Now it's still a bit maze-like, but again, this is its default stage, right? This is no modifiers added whatsoever. So if you're going to use modifiers, you're going to be able to tweak that to your standards, what you prefer, what you like. Your goal is just to get modifier items, then generally you probably wouldn't use much in here. You maybe use some level 1s because they're fairly easy to get from just running, small map dungeons and getting random modifiers. So let's see what happens when we add a larger room modifier. So we got our lower wall modifiers, we got our larger rooms. So you can see the walls are fairly tall. I think these are around size, the small map is size 6, medium is 7, large is size 8 walls, which means you're going to need, that's a -3 to the walls, -4, -5. So if I use the best modifier, which you would get from, the extra large map sentinel kills. Whoops, gotta make it first. Just do that, and then we're gonna add a walls level 5, so if it's size 8, you're gonna -5, so we're gonna get size 3 walls, right? So we're gonna get much shorter walls. You can even do a 4. Let's do a 4. And then for the larger rooms, we'll just do a 5. Right, so let's create that. There it is. Lower walls, and there it is. So you can see the walls have been lowered. And there's much, much larger rooms. And what's nice is if you have a deep looter, you're going to be able to see you could always see the vagabonds as it was, but you're going to be able to see them much more easy. since there's a longer distance. There's lower walls. Lower walls is always really helpful to have so you can more easily make out your maze. So those are going to be a valuable item to use, especially in deeper dungeons. So you're going to be wanting to run some smaller end dungeons, get your modifiers and put them to use, or who knows, maybe I'll make with a crafting system where you can even combine lower ones to make some higher ones with a chance to fail or something. We don't know yet. But yeah, much larger rooms, and you can see you've got the world buffs here too. Again, I can make these global so that special event on the weekend, all lower walls are level 5 and rooms are level 5. So all your dungeons you run are just going to be, by default, looking like roughly this. And then whatever else you add to it from your modifiers will stack. All world buffs will likely always stack. Depending on the buff. Some I'll make, won't stack. Most will. But yeah, so there you have it. Now let's say, clear difference from that versus, using your modifier items. Now let's make one more. We're going to add so there's also so we just saw the lower walls. So what happens if you use, knowing that these are size 8, and again, I might eventually add in a tooltip, like it'll tell you what size walls are. That way it's easier to just know which modifier to use to just get rid of your walls. So if it's size 8, then I need at least a 7, right? Or if I know it's size 8, I could use a 3, a 6, and a 2. Well, so let's do that. Since those are lower tier, they're easier to get, right? So that's 3 plus 3 is 6, and we need a 2. And again, it's going to eat up all your modifier slots, but you get to use cheaper, more common ones, right? So it's going to be easier to come by those. And if it's level 8 and the walls are level 8, you get no walls, because you took it down low enough to where it detected, alright, the walls are gone. You used up all your modifier slots, but at least you didn't use high tier ones, Or you could use a high tier and a lower tier, so a 5 and a 3, and then have one empty spot left for resurrections. So if you're doing a skiller, you remove your walls and you have a +3 extra life, or maybe you have a fountain of youth. That way you can really, tweak the dungeon to your specific likes and dislikes. So that's always nice to have. Now, let's see again. We'll go ahead and just show off a little bit more of the modifier items. So let's go ahead and... So now, we've already seen the gold, we've seen the larger rooms, we've seen the lower walls. So let's make it a lower wall is a level 5. Just because I'm going to use... We could use the no walls. Now again, this is going to be a very rare item that you can get from the extra large map. Eventually the colossal map, when I make it, you'll have a super small chance to get it from extra large maps. But deeper you go, the higher odds you'll get. Not higher odds, I'm sorry, the different the map, better odds. Because again, no walls, that means you don't have to use any of your wall modifiers. Extra large map has size 9 walls, so you need a 5 and a 4 just to get rid of the walls. Or, if you have one of these bad boys, 1 is all it takes. Walls are gone. Now, if you don't have that, then even just lowering your walls down to a 5, so if you're on an extra large from a 9 minus 5, you still got level 4 walls, which you'll be able to see over, because it's still smaller than the default level 6 walls on the main map. Now, we could actually do that. If I was making a dungeon and I was like, I don't want to waste a level 5 modifier, we know that the walls in here are 8, so we can take them down to a 4, right? Because 8 minus 4 is 4. And let's go ahead and add on a no wall collision rare mod. That way I could just run through the walls. And just in case, I'm going to add in a fountain of youth, in case I get killed in here. I don't like death. Alright, so there we go. We got lower walls 4, no collision walls, and a fountain of youth. So there's Fountain of Youth, we rolled an 8. That's nice. We got level 4 lower walls. We have no wall collision. All dungeons have no collision with inner walls. So you can see that mob, that Minotaur already just ran right through the wall because there's no collision, right? And we can see over the walls fairly easily. So we didn't have to use a super high tier. I mean, a tier 4 is kind of high. I could have probably used a tier 3, even a tier 2, and get it to like the default walls of like the easy map. You know, the small dungeon map size. So you could use, you know, you're just, again, it's going to be based on what items you have, what you find most useful to you, what you're willing to deal with, versus, you know, like higher walls, but you could run through them, so you don't waste that modifier slot. But again, if the walls are super high and you can't see over them very easily, even if you can run through them, you don't know what's on the other side. And then see how we didn't have to use a larger rooms mod because we lowered the walls, we can see everything, so why waste the slot, right? You could use that for something better, like I don't know, higher vagabond chance modifier item when I create it, or extra mobs if you're doing a skiller, right? You're going to want extra mobs in here. So, okay, moving on. Set up the logic for the new geomod items above. A bug fix, maze outer corners never being cleared upon regeneration would build up over time, causing lag upon generation that would generally take longer and longer. So that was just when I built the new logic for the outer walls and outer corners. I wasn't clearing the array of the position of these corners. So every time it would generate another dungeon in here, when I would click regenerate, say there's 100 corners, now I regenerate, there should only still be 100, right? Well, now there's 200. Regenerate, now there's 300, 400, 500. So it was just getting longer and longer to regenerate the maze. Not really a huge issue when you're generating it only one time when you activate the dungeon, but if it's like the maze in the lab and it regenerates, say, once every 24 hours and the server doesn't restart or anything, then every 24 hours you get an extra 100 corners, then 200, then 300. Eventually it could even lead to crashing the server because it took too long to regenerate. So, nice little fix there. Bug fix where the maze on client side would generate sometimes before the seed of the dungeon, the random seed, was replicated in time, resulting in a maze different than the server, which would result in kickback. So if you end up getting a different random seed than the server, so the server replicates the seed to the client, well, sometimes from lag, it doesn't replicate fast enough, and when you go and you generate the dungeon, the maze, it generate the maze before that seed copied over to the client. So you'd get a different maze layout than what the server actually has. So let's say you're running right here and there's a wall, right? You're running straight across because let's say this is fully empty. I'm sorry, bad example. Let's say you go this way, right? But the server actually has a wall right here. So you're running, and if you don't jump, you can freely run, right? But the moment you jump, it kicks you back over here because the server knows you're just face planting into a wall. You're not moving. But on the client side, you're freely moving because there was no wall block. But the moment you jump, for whatever reason, the server knows, oh, wait a minute, you're not right there. And then it updates back to where you're supposed to be. Kind of hard to explain. That's just, I don't know why it doesn't immediately just push you back over here, but only detects it when you jump. It's really strange. But even if you ran over here on client side and you're moving around in areas you're not supposed to be, you're not actually there. Even if you can see what's out there, you're still not there. The enemies aren't going to attack you. They don't know you're there. They all know you're over here. So it's not a huge issue, but it was until I fixed it. So bug fix where the maze on client side would generate sometimes. Oh wait, that's the one I just read off, isn't it? So this progressively got worse when adding in modifier items due to wall size and room size being modifiable. So you can imagine how much worse that got if you used a modifier of, you know, larger rooms, and now the server has different larger rooms than you, and it's essentially the same thing. You'd get the kickback, and it was confusing. You didn't know where you were because there's walls where there shouldn't be. Moving on. Bug fix with maze replication failing to be accurate when no mods were used, or only one or two mods were used, and not all three mods. So I redesigned the replication system a bit to where it's much more, basically when you're generating the maze, it waits until the server has sent the okay that, oh hey, all these have been replicated over to you, you're good to go. So it was a nice new little bit of logic I had to figure out. Had a little bit of help with that, which was nice. So it was with somebody that really knows their replication logic. Moving on, we got created item and the logic behind it for earth key modifier, no walls and no collision walls. You've seen those. Added all the dungeon mod items to drop from the sentinel based on the dungeon map the sentinel is on. So small map, you'll get like your level 1 no wall, or level 1 lower walls, level 1 larger rooms, etc. With very low chance for the rare mods. Medium map, tier 2 mod items with slightly increased chance for the rare mods. So like what I mean by that is you might get a tier 2 mod in a low level dungeon, but it's got a much lower chance. Like it's not going to happen often, but it can happen. And then in tier 2 you can get tier 3 ones with slightly increased odds, so on and so forth. But we only have 4 maps, so tier 5 items have been included to be dropped in the 4th map, so the extra large map. Although at a lower chance, you know, roughly like 50% of the time. So we added new tag, Earth Key Mod, to special loot drop logic. The special loot drop logic is used for things such as the Vagabonds, the Sentinels, Christmas events, Valentine's, special events, anything I want to do for that. I can make any mob have a special loot tag and a % chance to drop that loot list upon death. So basically what this means is when you kill Doc, Doc has the tag for Doc, right? And it knows that if he has that tag upon death, add the loot Viserium ingots. So we'll take a look at the Minotaur Spirit. So you can see I've added, you know, we got the Vagabond loot list, so it knows to give it dust depending on the depth. We got Boss, which knows to add modifiers upon his death, like a loot, like Earth Key modifiers, as well as a plain heart gem, or depending on the depth or the map you're on. I think I went with the map you're on. Valentine's event loot, maybe I went, upon killing a Minotaur Spirit, he has a 0.1% chance, which is a 10%, right? He has a 10% chance to drop the Valentine's loot list. Or maybe has a 50% chance to drop the Valentine's loot list. So I added Earth Key mods, right? Which is the master list of all the Earth Key mods with different chances. And if a chance fails, it re-rolls again for a different item from the list, rolls the chance if it hits, so that you have, you know, higher chance to get the tier 1, tier 2 and such, lower chance to get tier 3, even lower chance to get tier 4, and a rare chance to get tier 5. But again, this is all also going to be based on how often you even roll successfully to get that loot list. So if we leave it at a, let's just, yeah, we'll do, let's do 0.75, right? 75% chance that upon killing a creature, he will drop the Earth Key mods loot list. And this is real easy. We're going to make this one super easy and just add. So the lower walls 99 is just the no walls mod. I'm going to eventually tweak that so it actually says no walls. Again, this is it's going to spawn a lot because dungeon key limit ignored. You're not supposed to be able to activate this key in this dungeon because I mean that's way too many guys. This is meant for the extra large map, not a medium map. So let's just get a few of these guys. Oh, okay, they hit me really hard. I wasn't expecting them to hit me that hard. Mistakes were made. Where is... okay, there we go. 17,000 silver dust. That ought to do it. Oh, I got the wrong staff. You know what? That's okay. I can freeze them into place. Oh, he's still hitting me. sure enough, he did drop one, and he dropped an extra gold 25%. So not only did he drop one, he rolled a rare one at that. So this guy dropped one, extra gold 15%. This guy doesn't look like he dropped any. Oh, we got one in here. It's worth 25k, and then so you get the 25k plus whatever the value of all this is. Total is 61k. So we got an extra gold 20%. It's not horrible. Extra gold 5%, and you know, you could always see like the best item that's in here it will be what the glow color is. So we know that there's a green item in here, we know there's a rare item, so green is uncommon, rare is blue, purple is epic, and orange is legendary. So it's kind of hard to group these guys up because they'll murder me. But it would have been really nice. Yeah, we'll do it. Why not? It's the last part of the video. Why not? So at this point, you can stop watching. I'm just kind of dicking around with this last bit. So that's essentially everything that's you know, that there is to see. That's all the modifications made. That's all the latest work done. Other than that, it's just, you know, fine-tuning the systems that are here before I move on to finally balancing like the main map. Balancing like zones. I want to make like sort of zones so that there is progression in the like Fingal. I'm going to modify it so that it'll tweak levels of the mobs it spawns, so that even if I have all the creatures spawning there, they're all level, you know, 1 through 5. And then in this little area over here, you've got level 5 through 10. So rather than duplicating certain characters and tweaking their stats manually, I'm just going to make it all dynamic. It'll just be so much easier to make it dynamic and just have, I feel like it has more potential that way, you know? You just tweak it and it'll be nice. So that way it feels like you're actually progressing as you go. So if you try to run to like some other town halfway across the map, it's probably not going to happen. You're going to get killed. You know, progression. So it actually feels like you're getting somewhere when you run to a different town. It's like, oh, these mobs over here are way higher level. You know, it's not just this level 3 running around all over the world. These guys are taking a little bit, huh? Oh, that's why. Because the electricity is only hitting one guy. There we go. So for the freezing staff, it only uses the electricity on the first guy it hits. The explosion one checks your full damage from the silver dust as well and hits everyone for that amount. So there you go. So now we can kind of see at a 75% chance of dropping the modifier loot. We've got a lower walls level 5, larger rooms 5, and no other super rare ones. Plenty of blue ones. We got a white dust and some larger rooms. Larger rooms 4, extra enemies 20%. Yeah, there you have it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you see something that's kind of questionable. Maybe you don't agree with a certain way something works and you'd like to see it tweaked, or just maybe you have an idea for a really cool modifier. And you know, if it sounds really cool and it's fairly easy to do and it doesn't, you know, damage the gameplay or the systems that are currently in place, then it could be worth looking into. So, yeah. All right, have a good one.